I've been going back to my Game Boy recently. It's that time of the year where Nintendo doesn't really have any games releasing until the springtime, and Nintendo Directs? Pfft, it's been drier than Calamari Desert. But even when Switch games are pouring, I always love going back to the Game Boy because of how many great games it has. But there's been one game I haven't been able to put down, and that game is Wario Land 2. Originally, I thought the game was too slow-paced, but after playing it more and more, I'm beginning to love the game, and it might even be my favorite Wario Land. Originally, after I beat it, I was going straight into Wario Land 3, but now I think I'm gonna 100% it, along with playing 3. Wario Land Shake It to an extent is the only Wario Land game I don't have that much experience with, but that doesn't change the fact that I love the Wario Land series, and I'm very passionate about it. And in this video, I'm gonna be answering the question, what happened to Wario Land? I'll be looking over the games in the series, and then determining why Nintendo isn't too invested in making a new one, and how they, and we, could change that. Wario's first appearance was in the highly underrated but phenomenal game Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins. This is one of my favorite Mario games, and it really took advantage of the hardware of the Game Boy. Not only is it graphically impressive, but it's such a unique entry in the series. One of the things that made it so unique is instead of rescuing a princess, you're retrieving Mario's castle back from none other than the fat greedy SOB himself, Wario. This is the first and only time Wario's a villain in a mainline Mario game, and to say the least, people loved him. Nintendo saw that people loved him so much that Mario wasn't even playable in the third entry in Super Mario Land. Enter Wario Land Super Mario Land 3. I mean, it's pretty obvious they use the Mario Land branding to kickstart the series, but this is the first Wario Land. After being so distraught not being able to steal Mario's castle, he then sets out to steal treasure from Captain Syrup to buy his own castle. Doesn't sound like something a hero would do, right? That's because you are the villain, but the way I see Wario, he's not so much of a villain, more of a greedy anti-hero. I think him and Mr. Krabs would make great friends. If you've never played Wario Land, this one's a lot more like a Mario game, but beefed up. Wario is slower than Mario, but he's a lot stronger. He has a shoulder dash he can use as an attack, and has power-ups like the Viking helmet, which makes the dash stronger and gives him a ground pound, a gator hat that can shoot fire, and a jet that allows him to glide. The goal is simple, get coins and reach the goal, but there are hidden exits which add replay value to the game, and make the game even more in-depth. After replaying Wario Land, it was a good first start for the series, but in a few ways, it was a little bit too similar to Mario, and the way you earn more coins just sucks. It's just luck. No strategy involved, just luck. And you're gonna need them for the best ending. There's also treasure hidden in some levels, so you're gonna have to look out for that too. But other than those flaws, Wario Land is a pretty good game with a lot of replay value and fun to be had, and is a good starting point for the series. Usually I would say up next is Wario Land 2, but there was actually another Wario Land in between 1 and 2. Wario Land 1.5? No, Nintendo isn't Disney. There's a reason why Wario Land 2 is called that, and it's because the true second Wario Land is on a system Nintendo wanted you to forget. The Virtual Boy. Ah, the good old Virtual Boy, the red and black headache machine. All jokes aside, I've never had any discomfort playing the Virtual Boy despite the social isolation, and despite the game library consisting of a basic-as-hell Mario Tennis, a mediocre Mario Bros. Reimagining, and a few arcade-esque games, there is one game that's truly exceptional. And I couldn't think of a more Wario thing to do than be the sole reason to pick up a system. Virtual Boy Wario Land is a lot more similar to the first game than the later entries. The power-ups are here, and the dreaded luck minigames are back, but they're not as bad as they were in the first one. But it's so much more than just a remake of the first game. It is completely different. There are so many areas to explore, and you can even jump into the backgrounds of stages. This is a game where I feel Wario Land truly started to get its own identity, and was a major step for what the series became. The levels are far less linear, with there being a lot more areas to explore, and more secrets. The pacing is so much better with the addition of a run button, and it's so satisfying once again to smash into your enemies. But this time in 3D! The game is rather short, but even so, this is a fantastic game, and I'm still debating whether I like Wario Land 2 or Virtual Boy Wario Land more. But, if there's a game that gives me a reason to break out the Virtual Boy, it's gotta be a damn good game. It's a shame not many people got to play this gem of a 2D platformer, and I'd love to see it remade. But more on that later. Like with the CDI games, Virtual Boy games are something seldomly referenced by Nintendo, and they probably wanted you to forget that anything related to it ever happened. Enter Wario Land 2. What's interesting to note is that there are actually two versions of the game. The standard gray one is a Game Boy game that will have limited colors on a Game Boy Color, but the black cart that I have is in full color, but can also be used on an original Game Boy. Both are the same game though. This is a game where Wario Land fully evolved into its own thing, and this set the standard for every succeeding Wario Land game. So what exactly changed? The levels are expansive just as they were in Virtual Boy Wario Land, but here there are branching paths and alternate missions that you can play. It's almost a Metroidvania type game, but not quite there. Wario must have gotten a killer workout in the first two games because he is invincible now, but will lose coins if he takes damage. Personally, this is a great thing because game overs aren't really as punishing as they are annoying. Losing coins feels punishing, and it motivates you not to get too cocky because even though you're invincible, you're still trying to get rich. And the good thing is, the luck minigames are gone. You can decide to make the minigames easier to earn treasure and puzzle pieces by spending more coins, or be a cheapskate but face a harder difficulty. Another major addition is a lack of power-ups, but instead power-downs. This is such a Wario thing. Depending on what situation you're in, they can be very useful, but they can also go the other way around. Some of my favorites are Zombie Wario, mainly because of how cool he looks, Spring Wario, Mini Wario, and you can even get Wario drunk. In the Japanese version, the penguins actually throw beer at Wario, intoxicating him beyond belief, but sadly, this was changed in the international version. Wario Land 2 is a fantastic game and set the standard for what Wario Land should be. But how'd the follow-up turn out? Wario Land 3 is one of those Game Boy Color exclusive games. If you don't know how to tell the difference, a black Game Boy Color cartridge will be enhanced on a Game Boy Color, but backwards compatible with the original. The clear cartridges can only be played on a Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance. This was usually done in cases where games use the extra processing power of the Game Boy Color, and in Wario Land 3, it definitely shows. They added in some really high quality animations to Wario and the characters, and despite the hardware being 8-bit, it does feel like you're playing a cartoon. Seriously, these animations are great. He even winks while doing the shoulder dash. But this game is different in a lot of ways than Wario Land 2. You're now unlocking treasure chests as a goal to try to get 5 music boxes to return to your world. The game feels a lot more Metroid-esque than the previous entries. You'll be backtracking quite a bit, and there's now a day and night cycle, which can change the layout of the levels, and certain treasure can only be found at certain times of the day. But there is one major difference between Wario Land 3 and the other Wario Land games. You have to unlock most of your abilities. Initially, I hated this feature. And while I like having the abilities at the beginning because it gives you more options on how to clear a level, I actually kinda like this. It gives the game a greater feel of progression, and it's fun exploring parts of levels you didn't have access to before. I love going back to levels with new paths, and it's so rewarding finding them and exploring. It gives a game a grander feeling. It's a lot more puzzle and exploration oriented than the previous games, but this is a game I'm really starting to love, and I said this with Wario Land 2, but maybe, just maybe, this could be my favorite Wario Land. I need to beat it first, but I've loved what I played. If a series is popular enough to get a 4th entry, that means something. Wario Land 4 was released on the Game Boy Advance in 2001, and is more of a combination of the first 2 games and the later 2. The levels aren't as open as they were in 2 and 3, and it looks like Wario really let himself go because he is no longer invincible. But you can't get a game over, so you just get sent back to the beginning of the stage. The good news is all Wario's abilities are from the start, and like I said before, the invincibility in 2 and 3 were cool, but it's not too big of a problem lacking it here. The game is a lot more action-oriented than 2 and 3, which were more puzzle-oriented, but that's not really a bad thing. There are still collectibles and treasure to be found just like in any other Wario Land game, but I'd say it's closer to collecting star coins in New Super Mario Bros. Or the puzzle pieces in Kong Letters and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. You're still going to be exploring the levels and they're still large, but not to the scale of 2 or 3. But the thing is, Wario Land 4 is really good. While I would say my enjoyment with Wario Land 4 is on par with 3 but not as much as 2 or Virtual Boy Wario Land, it's still a really good game. It's a good combination of the two styles of gameplay, and I think the series was in the right direction. However, it does have one really annoying feature that once you clear the stage, you have to run all the way back to the start in a limited amount of time. I hate this feature, but overall, Wario Land 4 is really good. I like that Wario is still animated like a cartoon character, and it was a pretty good image of what the series evolved to 7 years later. The first and only Wario Land on a home console, Wario Land Shake It, or Shake Dimension if you're in Europe, was released a whopping 12 years ago on the Wii and was developed by Goodfeel. This is a company known for having highly detailed unique art styles like the Yarn theme in Kirby's Epic Yarn and the Craft theme in Yoshi's Crafted World, and Wario Land Shake It is no exception. The game has a hand-drawn art style, and because the Wii is a lot more powerful than the Game Boy Advance, there was so much more they could do with the presentation. Here's the funny thing though. It seems that every Wario Land gameplay style comes in pairs. The first one and VB Wario Land are a bit more action-esque with puzzle elements. 2 and 3 are more puzzle-esque with action elements. And 4 and Shake It are more of a combination of the two. Shake It is similar to 4 in a lot of ways. But one mistake I think they did was put less of a focus on the power downs. This was such a cool thing, and it sucks they don't have a major presence here. But considering Wario has over 2,000 animations, I can see why they're not here. I'm not happy with it, but I understand. Now this is a legitimate excuse for high quality animations. But the thing is, I feel besides the art style, Wario Land Shake It was a step in the wrong direction. The things that made Wario Land aren't all present, and while the gameplay is still excellent, it doesn't have the depth and charm most of the other games have. 4 simplified things a little bit, but it still felt like Wario Land. And I said this before, I think the power downs really help. It's still good, but it could have been even better. I really have to play more of it, but compared to the other Wario Land games, it's lacking a little bit. But that art style is something that needs to come back in a new Wario Land because it is phenomenal. I've been wanting a new 2D Mario with a hand-drawn art style reminiscent of Kotabe's artwork for the longest, and for Wario Land, I'd love to see the same thing. Now we're at a point in time where it's been roughly 12 years since the last Wario Land. For a series successful enough to get a 4th entry and 2 spin-offs being Wario World and Wario Master of Disguise, and even a sub-series being WarioWare, what on earth happened to Wario Land? The answer is actually a lot more simple than you think. Mario may have gotten his castle back from Wario in Super Mario Land 2, but there's one thing Wario stole in the meantime for almost 15 years. From 1992 to 2006, there were no mainline 2D Mario games. You know what there were though? Wario Land games. Not counting remakes, ports, or canceled games like VB Mario Land, there were no 2D Mario games. It was clear Wario took the spotlight, and during this period, we got some of the most creative, unique, and best 2D platformers ever made. Virtual Boy Wario Land is a sole reason to get a Virtual Boy. But even though we didn't get a new 2D Mario game, there were the Super Mario Advance games, which remade previous Mario games in a new fashion. And they sold great. Nintendo saw that there was still interest in 2D Mario games, and rather than developing Super Mario Advance 5, they put their efforts into creating a new 2D Mario game for their latest system, the DS. It was released at a time where people who haven't played games in years were starting to play games again, and during a period where there was a 2D Mario drought. Needless to say, New Super Mario Bros. Was a massive success, selling over 30 million copies and spawning a few sequels over the years. Not only did it get people back into gaming, but it brought in new gamers as well. Without New Super Mario Bros., I probably wouldn't even be making this video, because that's the game that got me into Mario and gaming in general. The last Wario Land we got was in 2008. Regardless if the game was as good as the past entries, so much care, love, and effort went into it. Every single frame had passion put into it, and it was clear the developers loved what they were doing. But what ended up happening? The game was poorly advertised and only sold a little over 1 million copies. That's not a commercial failure by any means, but a bit underwhelming compared to how much the previous entry sold. But comparing it to New Super Mario Bros. Wii? 29 million. Yes, Mario will sell better, but Wario Land still sold very well, and if it didn't, we wouldn't have gotten as many sequels as we did. But the times have changed now. We're now in a new decade, and after looking over Nintendo's 9 months earning release, I'm starting to notice something. The sales numbers are in, and New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe has sold almost 6 million copies. That's about as much as the Wii U original sold, and keep in mind, this is on a highly successful console compared to the Wii U, which sold terribly. 2D Mario games usually reach the 10 million mark very fast, and the fact that New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe hasn't enjoyed the sales the rest of the games have, shows me that the interest in New Super Mario Bros. Is declining. But you know what Mario games have sold well? Super Mario Odyssey is the 3rd best-selling Switch game with almost 17 million copies sold. Breath of the Wild is very close to that. Even Luigi's Mansion 3, a game that's very close to New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe's sales, and that's barely been out for over 3 months, has sold almost as much. What I'm noticing is fans nowadays like games that take risks, that are different, that have their own identity. That's not saying they like games that strip the elements they love from a series like Paper Mario Color Splash. They just like exciting games that have new ideas and are memorable. Super Mario Odyssey took a lot of risks. You would rarely see Mario wearing anything other than his iconic outfit, and you would rarely see them reference anything beyond the mainline games. I bet you would never guess in a million years Mario will be able to possess enemies, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Face it, New Super Mario Bros. Was the right game at the right time. Not only was there a 2D Mario drought, but casual gamers wanted something to play that would take them back to the days when they played the NES. The market is different now. Casual gamers have moved on to smartphones, and we're at a point in time where NES nostalgia is not just declining, but to a point where it's annoying a lot of people. Pandering to nostalgia is one of the worst things a game franchise can do, because it holds back an experience that could truly be unique in order to pander to what was famous before. That's not to say you can't make references to past games, but when a game focuses so hard on trying to replicate that old experience while not taking risks, that's when you know there's a problem. And you know what? We need Wario more than ever now. What started off as a beefed up Super Mario Land turned into an action Metroidvania-esque series that had its own identity and charm. Wario Land is a franchise unlike any other because of how expansive the levels are, the power downs, and just how animated and lovable Wario is as a character. I don't want Wario Land back because I have fond memories playing the games. I want it back because it's such a unique series that has a lot of potential. So what could Nintendo do to bring it back? The first and best option would ideally be having a new Wario Land, having the hand-drawn art style shake it, but maybe a little bit more like Western animation, retaining the power downs, having the expansive levels that 2 and 3 had, making Wario invincible again, and adding some new ideas in. A few I had are costumes for Wario, new level themes, and maybe even co-op multiplayer with Waluigi. Really, all they'd have to do is expand mostly on Land 2 and 3, and make sure Wario has all his abilities from the start, add enough new content and creative ideas to make the game feel fresh again, and you're good to go. But there's another option they could take that I think is more plausible, and has been rumored to be in development for the longest. All the Wario Land games have been re-released in some form, and are easily accessible, with one exception. I'm of course talking about Virtual Boy Wario Land. Let's say you want to play the game, officially at least. You'd have to get a Virtual Boy, and unless you're a hardcore Nintendo fan like I am, it's not ideal to get one. They're expensive, the game lineup is passable, and really, it's more of a Wario Land machine if you're gonna play games on it. Not many people had the opportunity to experience how great Virtual Boy Wario Land is, so you know what? I think it's the perfect game to remake and reboot the Wario Land series. I'm surprised it didn't get a remake on the 3DS considering that was a 3D system to begin with, but a Switch remake would be even better because it's a hybrid system and it's much more powerful. It could have a hand-drawn art style, maybe with a few tweaks like replacing the power-ups with the power-downs the series is known for to make it feel even more Wario. The game is also short, so if they added in 20 or so new levels, it would be the perfect game. The name can't be Virtual Boy Wario Land, so instead, I'd call it Wario Land Return to the Awazon. On a final note, if you're passionate about Wario Land, let Nintendo know. I've decided to create the hashtag BringBackWarioLand, and feel free to share this video and keep the love going for the Wario Land franchise, because it's a series unlike any other, and we need him back more than ever at this point. So what do you guys think? Do you want a new Wario Land game? If you made it this far in the video, I have no doubt you do. And what's your favorite Wario Land? If I had to guess, it would probably be 4. But for me, it's a tie between Virtual Boy Wario Land and Wario Land 2. Anyways, thanks for watching and keep calm and da-da on.